The hearing room was tense, cameras flashing, every seat filled with reporters hungry for a headline. Kash Patel leaned back confidently, wearing that half smirk that suggested he thought he'd already won the day. He spoke in clipped, dismissive tones, certain his words would dominate the narrative. But across from him sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, calm, unmoved, eyes sharp, as if she could see straight through the performance. Patel's strategy was simple: belittle, distract, and project authority he didn't actually have. What he didn't realize was that Crockett had been preparing for this exact kind of arrogance her entire career. As Patel droned on, twisting the truth to fit his agenda, Crockett waited. She let him pile his words higher, until the contradictions were impossible to miss. And then, like lightning in a storm, she delivered the line. One sentence delivered with surgical precision: "Mr. Patel, if misinformation were a resume, you'd be the most overqualified person in this room." The room exploded. Gasps, laughter, and stunned silence collided all at once. Patel froze, his smirk dissolving in real time. Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The truth of her words carried more weight than any shouting match ever could. In that single moment, Crockett didn't just dismantle Patel's credibility, she redefined the entire hearing. Reporters scrambled to capture the quote. Clips hit social media within minutes. And Patel? He sat there exposed, outplayed, and visibly rattled. If you believe moments like this deserve to be amplified, when truth cuts through arrogance with devastating clarity, hit subscribe right now. Stay tuned, because what follows will show exactly why Crockett's one line sent shockwaves far beyond that room. The reason Crockett's one line landed with such force wasn't just because it was clever, it was because of what was at stake. This wasn't a casual debate or a harmless back and forth. It was a high-profile hearing, broadcast nationwide, where the credibility of institutions and the future of accountability were on the line. Patel came into the room with a mission: to push his narrative, to paint himself as the victim of political witch hunts, and to undermine oversight by blurring the lines between fact and fiction. He was armed with rehearsed talking points designed to mislead, distract, and stir outrage. But Crockett understood something deeper. She knew millions of Americans were tuning in, exhausted by endless spin, desperate for clarity. They weren't just watching Patel's testimony, they were judging whether truth still had a place in public discourse. And Patel's arrogance gave her the perfect opening to remind everyone that lies can't survive when met with preparation and precision. By choosing her words so carefully, Crockett raised the hearing from routine politics into a defining cultural moment. It wasn't just about Patel being embarrassed. It was about proving that arrogance collapses. Every viewer watching could feel it. For Patel, this was supposed to be his stage. For Crockett, it became her courtroom. And her single devastating line ensured that the narrative would not belong to him, but to her. But what made Patel so vulnerable? Why did one line slice so deeply through his armor? To understand that, we need to step back and examine his story and the cracks that made this downfall inevitable. To understand why, Jasmine Crockett's line landed like a thunderclap. You have to know who Kash Patel is and why his presence in that hearing room carried so much weight. Patel isn't just another political figure. He's a man who has built his brand on loyalty to Donald Trump and a willingness to wage war on established norms. Patel first gained national recognition as a key Trump aide, someone who wasn't afraid to bend rules or narratives in defense of the former president. From the Russia investigation to efforts to discredit the intelligence community, Patel carved out a reputation as Trump's relentless bulldog. That loyalty won him influence, but it also branded him as one of the most polarizing figures in American politics. By the time he appeared at this hearing, Patel wasn't just defending himself, he was representing an entire political strategy. A strategy built on sowing doubt, spinning conspiracy, and portraying accountability as persecution. For many Americans, Patel embodied the idea of politics as a game, where truth is optional and power is the only prize worth chasing. By striking at the exact fault line of Patel's arrogance, Crockett exposed not just him, but the entire culture of spin he represented. It wasn't just Patel who took the hit. It was the narrative he carried with him. And in that instant, it became clear to viewers everywhere. The old tricks weren't going to work anymore. That set the stage for her devastating one-liner. Because when Crockett finally unleashed it, the crowd didn't just hear a clapback. They heard years of frustration with Patel's brand of politics come crashing down in a single moment. The atmosphere in the hearing room was tense, like a storm brewing just before the lightning strikes. Kash Patel had been speaking with his usual air of certainty, tossing out carefully polished lines meant to project authority. His supporters in the room leaned forward, eager to see him dismantle any challenge. But that anticipation turned into unease the moment Jasmine Crockett's name was called. Crockett didn't rush to the microphone. She took her time, walking with steady confidence, each step carrying the weight of someone who knew exactly what she was about to do. Unlike Patel's bluster, her presence was calm but razor sharp, like a blade sheathed but ready. Her eyes locked onto Patel, and the room seemed to tilt. This wasn't just another exchange. It was about to be a reckoning. For Crockett, this wasn't personal. It was principled. She wasn't there to trade insults or to perform for cameras. As she began to speak, her voice cut through the chamber with measured precision. There was no grandstanding, no wasted words, only direct challenges to Patel's narratives. She cited facts, pointed out contradictions, and built her argument like a master litigator weaving a case. And with each sentence, Patel's smirk seemed to falter, his confidence slipping into defensiveness. The audience noticed it. You could feel the energy shift, as if people realized they weren't just watching another politician spar. They were witnessing a confrontation between truth and manipulation, integrity and arrogance. Crockett embodied a kind of strength that didn't need to shout. It simply demanded respect. By the time she leaned into the moment that would become legendary, the stage was perfectly set. Patel, once so sure of his dominance, now looked cornered. Crockett, calm as ever, was about to deliver the line that would send shockwaves far beyond the hearing room. Everyone knew something big was about to happen. The question wasn't if Patel would be challenged, it was how devastating the blow would be. The moment had been building like a drumbeat, each exchange between Crockett and Patel, raising the tension higher. Patel had tried to interrupt, tried to spin, but each attempt only gave Crockett more ground to stand on. And then, with the entire room watching, she delivered the line that detonated. "You can keep pretending, Mr. Patel," she said, her voice steady, almost surgical. But the difference between propaganda and truth is that only one survives the light of day. And you're standing in the dark. The chamber erupted. Gasps, murmurs, even outright cheers slipped through the air despite the supposed decorum of the setting. Crockett didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her words hit with a force that no raised voice could ever match. It was the precision, the clarity that cut through. Patel blinked, visibly rattled. For a man who prided himself on never losing control, his composure cracked in real time. He fumbled for a response, grasping for the same talking points that had carried him through countless interviews and hearings. But in that moment, they sounded hollow, recycled, powerless. Crockett's single sentence had stripped them of their weight. Viewers, watching later, would replay the clip over and over, sharing it across social media with captions like, "This is how you handle liars." And Crockett didn't miss. The moment transcended politics. It became a symbol of accountability. Inside the room, you could feel Patel shrinking, his shoulders tightening as if the weight of the words pressed down on him. Crockett, by contrast, didn't even lean back in triumph. She stayed calm, collected, her point made. It wasn't about theatrics, it was about truth. And in that instant, it became clear. The battle was over. Patel had been exposed, not by volume or spectacle, but by the sharp clarity of a single line. It doesn't just end an argument, it defines it. The silence after Crockett's line lasted barely a heartbeat. Then the dam broke. Gasps rippled through the room, followed by an audible wave of murmurs, laughter, and even clapping from the audience. The cameras caught everything. Patel's startled blink, the shifting expressions of his allies, and the subtle smirks of those who had been waiting for someone to finally cut through his bluster. Crockett's words had turned the sterile chamber into a stage, and the crowd was no longer passive. They were participants in the takedown. On social media, within minutes, clips of the exchange started circulating with captions like, "She ended him in 10 seconds flat," and "The look on Patel's face is priceless." Hashtags began trending. "Cirque Crockett destroys" and "Where truth overlies." Memes, reaction GIFs, and fan edits flooded Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, each amplifying the moment. Commentators seized on it too. Pundits who had grown weary of endless, partisan bickering suddenly had fresh energy as they replayed the line over and over on cable news. Some called it a masterclass in discipline and precision. Others went further, framing it as a turning point, a rare moment when truth and composure cut through noise and arrogance. What made the eruption so powerful? Inside the chamber, it was visceral, almost cinematic, the villain stunned, the hero calm, the crowd erupting. Outside, it became communal validation. Millions of people who had grown cynical felt a spark of hope. They saw Crockett not just as a congresswoman, but as a voice willing to say what many had been thinking but didn't, have the platform to declare. For Patel, it was humiliating. For Crockett, it was legacy-defining, and for the audience, it was unforgettable. A single sentence had shifted the mood of a nation weary of empty words, reminding everyone that clarity still holds power. But what happens after the applause fades? How do moments like this ripple beyond the walls of a hearing room and into the bloodstream of politics itself? The moment didn't stay contained within the walls of that hearing room. It exploded outward, sending shockwaves across the political landscape. By the time the hearing adjourned, Crockett's one-liner had already gone viral. Clips were being replayed not just on political talk shows, but on morning television, late-night comedy, and even international broadcasts. What was meant to be a routine appearance for Patel had turned into a cultural moment that defined him in ways he could never control. On Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, Crockett's words became rallying cries. Activists reposted the clip with captions like, "This is leadership," and "We need more representatives like her." Even apolitical accounts joined in, using the moment as a meme template. Patel's expression, caught mid-blink, mid-fumble, was plastered over everything from sports, commentary to pop culture jokes. The internet had crowned Crockett the victor, and the crowd was eager to keep her win alive. Cable networks leaned in hard. CNN framed it as a sharp rebuke of misinformation. MSNBC replayed it alongside commentary about the growing power of women of color in Congress. Even Fox News couldn't ignore it, though their framing was one of outrage, calling it grandstanding. Yet even in their attempts to spin, they couldn't erase the fact that Patel had been left flustered and exposed. The real question was how Crockett would channel this momentum, and how Patel would try, and likely fail, to recover. When the echoes of that moment began to fade, what remained was something larger than a single exchange between Crockett and Patel. It was a lesson in the power of clarity, composure, and courage. In a political era where shouting matches and misinformation dominate headlines, Crockett's calm but devastating line proved that truth, when spoken with precision, can cut deeper than any insult. Her words didn't just dismantle Patel's argument, they reminded people that integrity still matters, that leaders don't have to stoop to chaos to win a battle. Crockett showed that real strength lies in discipline, in using intellect instead of outrage, in speaking not just to score points, but to uplift the idea that justice and truth can still prevail. In public discourse, the moral lesson was clear. Politics doesn't have to be reduced to noise. One voice, steady and unshaken, can shift the direction of the conversation. One sentence, crafted with purpose, can remind millions of people watching from home that dignity is not weakness. It is the sharpest weapon against arrogance. As the clip continued to circulate, the story became less about Patel's stumble and more about Crockett's rise. Her defense of truth became a collective rallying cry for those who refused to accept dishonesty as the norm. Crockett didn't just dismantle Kash Patel. She reminded the country that truth, spoken boldly, still has the power to shake the walls of power. That single line became more than a clapback. It became a defining moment of accountability, a reminder that arrogance always falters when confronted with discipline and courage. For Crockett, this wasn't simply about scoring political points. It was about standing up for principles larger than anyone hearing. It was about proving that leaders can embody strength without resorting to chaos, that intelligence can silence deception, and that dignity still commands respect in an era of noise. The clip may fade from trending lists in time, but its echo will remain in the minds of those who watched it live, replayed it online, and shared it with friends. Because it wasn't just about Patel's stumble, it was about Crockett's rise. Don't just watch history unfold from the sidelines. Be part of it. Subscribe now, hit that notification bell, and share this video so more people can witness what real accountability looks like. Because this wasn't just one victory, it's a spark. And together, we can make sure that spark lights the way forward.